Well, welcome to Ep.8 of the Pursuit Podcast. My name is Tom. I'm one of the pastors here at the Pursuit. And with me, I have a couple special guests, Mike and Elisabeth Slotten. So glad you guys are joining us today. I come to you as the host today, and it's a bittersweet podcast for me and many of our Pursuit family because these two, in just a few short weeks, are going to be transitioning out of Minot and moving away. But I don't want to give that away. I want to hear from them. But why don't you guys take a moment, and for those of you who don't know you very well, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then share what this next transition is all about for you guys.
Absolutely. Well, ladies first. Let's start with Elizabeth.
I'm Elisabeth. I have been in Minot since 2011. I went to college here, and towards the end of my college career, I started going to the Pursuit and also graduated with an elementary ed degree. So now I have been a music teacher for 4 years. We've been married for 4 years, 4.5 years. We have 2 kids. That's me.
All right.
And for me, if you've seen me guys at all around, I am currently the Momentum Director. Been doing that for almost 4 years too, and it's been awesome. Just been so cool to see God working in and through this church. And so, yeah, it's been a wild ride, but it's been fun.
Absolutely. So share a little bit. You guys are moving at the end of May. What are you guys going to be doing?
So at the end of May, we are moving back to Fargo, our hometown. As Elizabeth said, she's been here for almost 10 years. I've been here for 5, but God is just really stirring in our heart to share His love with people there. And so we are actually planting Rescue House Church.
Come on.
And slated to have our first monthly services Christmas Eve of this year. So we're really excited about that. Just excited to see what God has in store. Just feeling like, man, God's done so much in our lives that we just want to share that with as many people as possible and recognize that there's a need for that in Fargo. So that's kind of the transition you're talking about. And it's bittersweet for sure.
Well, I am super excited for them. As some of you know, I was a part of planning the Pursuit Church. So I get to live vicariously through you guys as you guys take a massive step of faith to go out and plant the church and Rescue House. So what I thought would be really awesome for this podcast episode is to think back on your journey here at the Pursuit Church. And then as we get to the end, we'll talk about what God is going to do through Rescue House Church and how we can partner with you guys. But I wanted to have you guys each share, how did you get involved at the Pursuit Church? Like, share a little bit. How did you get plugged in? What did that look like?
Well, she's the first. She was here before me, so
she was the first between the two of you.
Yeah, I was involved in another church in town in college and heard about the Pursuit and started transitioning about February of the first year. So you guys had started monthly services in October, and I started coming in about February. And I think it was my first time coming to the Pursuit, and Mo was leading worship at the time, and he came up to me and said, "Hey, I heard you play piano. You want to play with us?" And I didn't know who he was, and I was like, I don't know. So I was hesitant because one of the things I'd love to do is bring people to church, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to continue bringing my truckload of college students, but ended up starting to do worship, which was fun. I helped clean bathrooms at the strip club.
You were a strip club bathroom cleaner.
Strip club bathroom cleaner.
There's a special place in heaven for you and those who are part of that crew.
Tiffany Anderson and Laura. And
first of all, I love, by the way, that back in the day, we were so desperate for people. It was like, oh, you play the piano. Why don't you play on the worship team this next week? And
that's pretty much how it was.
I love that. It was just such a different time and place in the life of our church.
I tell Mo all the time that if I had to go through the interview process or if I had to audition to get on the worship team, I joke that I wouldn't have gotten on because I literally walked on because they didn't have a piano player. I was one of the first interns at the Pursuit. which was a lot of, I give Tom a hard time because it was a lot of moving things from one place to another.
It was a lot of fun. I think that's what you meant to say, Elizabeth.
They had, because we were a mobile church back then, we had a lot of storage units, and Pastor Nick was kind of in charge of us. And one of the biggest things I did that summer, that's one of the things I remember, is literally moving pallets of wood and all of our backdrops from one storage unit to another when we used to have a bunch of backdrops.
Well, I got to tell a quick story about that too, by the way. So let me redeem the internship. But anyways, they had to organize our storage closets because we had so much junk. Mm-hmm. And I remember somehow they lost a key to get into the storage unit, and so they were panicked. And I'm pretty sure you guys just prayed over the lock, right? Like you prayed over this thing, and somehow did it miraculously open?
So we had,
or did God show up with a miracle with like some vice grips and open it? I can't remember.
We had a key and it wasn't working. It was no, it wasn't a key. It was the one where you had to put the combination in.
That's probably like Nick being tricky. He gave you a fake key to mess with you. So we had a combination
and it wasn't working. It wasn't working. It was stuck. And I think one of the other interns literally just pulled it and it worked. And we were there for like 4 hours on the sweating heat, like no water, trying to get this stupid lock because we didn't want to disappoint.
Character building.
Tom and Nick. But I remember at the end of our internship, Nick looked at us and he said, "Why didn't you ask for help?" That was his big thing that he was trying to teach us. You don't need to do it all by yourself. And we didn't know that was an option. So anyone who's going to be an intern at the Pursuit, ask for help. Please ask for help.
That's great advice right there. But what's really cool about Elisabeth is she was almost a part of the Pursuit from the very beginning. So you've seen just the church go through so many transitions and how it's grown and how just all those things. So it's really cool, the perspective that you have on the journey of the Pursuit Church. Now, Mike, you came a little bit later. Share about how you got plugged into the Pursuit. Like how did you get involved?
Yeah, I think it was an interesting story, but got kind of connected actually through Elisabeth. Had a mutual friend, a pastor that we had both known in Fargo that recommended the Pursuit Church. And I reached out to Elisabeth just kind of because he knew that she was in the area in Minot to see when this church was, kind of what they were all about, what the name was, just to be able to go to it. And so I texted her and just looking for some community. And one thing led to another. And we ended up getting married, which is wild.
That's how it just one thing led to another, and boom, you're married.
But we're getting back to for me getting involved in the Pursuit. God wrecked my life and in college, and then ended up really wanting to serve as much as I could. And so whatever I could do at the Pursuit, I did. And so I started on the setup and teardown team. We were at the Sleep In, if you guys remember that. It was good times. And then just kind of kept transitioning. We've done a lot of different things. We've both been community group leaders, prayer team, just a lot of different things. And but even from the beginning, I think my passion for young people was there, and we had a lot of good conversations and led to me helping out with youth and taking the lead. So it was pretty cool.
No, I love your guys' journey because God has definitely taken you both on a process. From when you first got plugged in at the Pursuit, from cleaning strip club bathrooms to getting on the setup and teardown team to now, you lead our entire youth ministry. You're momentum director, and you are one of our worship leaders and have been such an integral part of just what God's doing here. It's so cool to see just how getting plugged in initially in the journey God takes you on, you just never know how he's going to use you in a local church. I thought it'd be cool for you guys to share for our listeners, what encouragement would you have for them to get plugged into a church? Like, why is that such an important next step for someone who attends a church?
Yeah. Well, there's always a spot to be filled. And what we did is we served wherever we could at the beginning. I mean, cleaning bathrooms, setting up, tearing down. On the worship team, we did prayer. We literally have probably been in I think I did kids a few times too. So you just do where the need is. And let me tell you, there's always need in the church. And find what we're good at. So me, I kind of got honed into the worship, and Mike got got honed into the kids ministry. And yeah, we wouldn't have known that was a spot that we could fill unless we had just jumped in wherever we could. So.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, said it really well, just, using our gifts, like exercising some of the things that God's given us to, bless the people in any way we can, whether it's, just making Tom look good by helping set up, or if it's, being on stage, like whatever we can do. And I think, I think a lot about what we talk about at the Pursuit as far as using our time, talents, and treasures, and for a season, for me, I didn't have a ton of, things to give other than my time. And so, I was get up early and set up, help set up. And so
it's not that you wanted to see me, right? We were still dating at the time when he was doing setup. So
that's
Mike was pretty much the fourth intern. You did everything with us.
There was a little ulterior motive behind serving on the setup team. There was this pretty girl who also set up.
The funny thing is she was never there. I never saw her at like 5:30 in the morning.
Oh, hello. This is going to turn into a marriage counseling session here.
We'll save that for later.
You were on the worship team, so you got out of the setup, I think.
I think I set up. Did we have to set up? That was a long time.
But I think what's cool about this conversation is, at least in our culture, so many people view church as just a service you attend, and they completely miss, I think, the depth and beauty and power of actually being involved and connected at a local church. Because God didn't create us to be spectators. He gave us gifts. He gave us time. He gave us all those things. And I think there's nothing better than making a difference for God's kingdom. And so what's cool is you guys have always lived it out. I feel like that's just something you've always known. If you're in a church, if you're a part of a local church, you get plugged in. What is someone missing out on if they don't get plugged in? I mean, because you guys are going to be planting a church here in just a little bit and calling people to get plugged in, because it's not just about them fulfilling a need. It's like God does something in you in your spiritual development. So what's someone missing if they aren't plugged into a local church?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things when you were talking about getting ready for this podcast was just really stretching your personal faith. Like you have to take steps of faith when you're doing this kind of thing. Trying new things that you've never done before, getting in uncomfortable situations. I would say I'm more of like I like to have one-on-one conversations more than maybe being on stage, but that was something I had to grow in, and I've seen God teach me a lot through that. And so, yeah, I think that's been really cool. And I would have never grown in my faith and my relationship with God if I didn't just take a step out, and keep taking a step out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I think Jesus calls us to not go to church, but be the church. And the reason why is you get to partner with what God's doing and sharing the gospel. I mean, whether you're greeting or you're serving coffee or you're on the worship team or you're in the prayer team, you're partnering with God and allowing his kingdom to come in a service, and then just connect people to Jesus. Yeah.
So you guys have been a part of the Pursuit Church now for, quite a few years. For you, Elisabeth, 6 years. Mike, you 5 years-ish?
Approaching 5, yeah.
Pretty crazy. As we reflect back on your time, before we start looking ahead to Rescue House Church, I'd love to hear from you guys. What have been some of your favorite moments from your time at the Pursuit Church? Or another way of asking it too would be, how have you seen God move in your life or in your ministry here? Just, I guess, let's have a conversation about what are some of those moments that you'll look back on your time at the Pursuit and go, okay, whoa, those were big moments or important moments in our journey.
Do you want to go first?
I can think of a lot of interesting times. I mean, it seems like there's been so much. But as a Momentum leader, it's been fun to be a part of a lot of trips. So I've got to lead, and I think a lot of like just interesting things have happened when we were in the Dominican Republic or Portland, or we went camping one time, and it was crazy wild. Like I felt like I was endangering some kids for a moment because we had to go through like this hailstorm and there was no turning back. And so, I don't know, some of those are really cool to remember, those fun moments that I got to have with young people. But it's just been really sweet to be a part of what God's doing here, because you just see life change every week, and to have a little part in that or be used by God has just been just incredible.
Yeah. I have enjoyed serving on the worship team when I look back. That's been a constant throughout the whole season of being at the Pursuit. Playing keys and then leading once in a while, and just creating relationships with Mo and Tara are some of the mentors in my life and friends. So I just enjoy looking back on that. And one thing that when we were thinking back about this was our wedding. Oh, yeah. I had just finished being an intern, and the church was smaller then, so this doesn't necessarily happen anymore, but we decided to get married in Fargo, and literally, I think the whole church packed up and drove to Fargo, spent the weekend, and I think you did our wedding, but then you actually left and drove back because you gave the message that next morning.
Yeah, right after the ceremony, hung out at the reception for just a little bit to celebrate, and then we had to get on the road to get back for Sunday. And I remember, I think Nick showed up with like a pack of 12 Red Bulls for the staff to make it through that Sunday morning, because it was such a crazy turnaround. But yeah,
I know that would probably never happen now, but we were just looking back, because I can't believe Mo packed all the sound stuff, like the drum kit, everything. And yeah, it was really sweet though. That was a blessing to have everyone there, but that was a fun moment of the Pursuit. Yeah.
Well, I think it just goes to show the bigger thing about the Pursuit family. Like, if you've been around the Pursuit at all for any length of time, you know that like you get treated like a family member. Yeah. And it's just like, this is crazy. Like, this is really what church is all about, is to be a family and loving each other. So I think that's maybe the heart behind that too.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I will share one of my favorite moments of Big Mike. So he was working here in town in the science field. That's your background. And he's felt like God was calling him into ministry. And so he was interviewing for our momentum director position. I think back then we called it Teen Pursuit. And we hadn't even offered him a job. And he shows up to the interview and he just says boldly, "I quit my job. I just feel like God's calling me to something different." And we're like, what in the world? This guy's crazy. Like, what if we don't hire this guy? But I remember just thinking, I love that kind of bold faith that I've seen in both of you in this journey, that when you believe God's calling you to step out, even if it doesn't seem logical or fit the mold on the outside, if you hear God saying go, you guys go. And I've just admired that so much about you guys. So that was one of my favorite moments. Mike just throwing caution to the wind, quitting his job without a new job. And you know what? It worked, because we hired him and God used him to take momentum to a whole nother level. It's been awesome. Mm-hmm. Now, there's so much more we could get to, but I want to ask this one question before we turn the corner into Rescue House Church. But what are you guys going to miss most about the Pursuit Church?
The people.
So much.
Yeah. We're saying, it's just a family. We're going to miss the people. It's been different the last couple of months, not being able to be together. I think we've all done an amazing job at continuing to meet virtually, and now we're starting to be able to meet more in person again. Yeah, definitely the family, walking in and knowing whether you're having a hard day or you're having a great day, that someone cares and looks you in the eye and really asks you how you're doing. I am going to miss most my groups. I feel like community groups have been a part of my journey in the Pursuit since the beginning, whether I was leading a college age group or in a college age group, to now I'm in a mom's group. And this is not a paid plug. I know we talk a lot about groups on Sunday morning, and that's for a reason, because that's something I look back and I will always cherish those conversations, the prayers, the coffee dates, and my mom's group now is a lifesaver, just having people that understand where you're at. So yeah, that's what I'm going to miss the most.
Same here. Yeah, it's really something when we're talking about this too. It's just like the same answer came out, was just the people and the community that has encouraged our faith. You know, we've had to wrestle through things as anybody has, but we've been able to do that with godly people, with people that are trying to do their best and follow God. And so it's been really encouraging. And I know, it's going to be hard. It's been harder in this season with the COVID, as everybody has had, but yeah.
I love that plug for groups, and she's not being paid, by the way, because I wholeheartedly agree that when you actually get connected in community with other believers in a local church, it's a game changer. Mm-hmm. It takes the experience of just attending a service to a whole new level. And so I love to hear that, because that's my heart, and that's what my experience has been too in a church. So it's really cool to hear you guys say that. Now we're going to transition now to talk about Rescue House Church, which I'm so excited about. And for those of you who don't know, which you probably should know if you followed this far along into the podcast, but they're moving at the end of May to move to Fargo, where you both grew up, and you're going to start a brand new church in that community. And we'll have you share the vision for that in just a moment. But one thing I thought would be really helpful for the listeners is, as you guys over the last couple years have just been praying and discerning God's leading in your life. This isn't just a whim. It's not like you woke up last week and said, oh, let's plant a church in Fargo. This is something that you guys have prayed about. You have sought wise counsel about. You guys have sought the Lord in this, and you just feel like God's calling you to go plant the church. How would you help someone who maybe in their life is trying to discern God's leading? Like, you guys have had to really dig into God to go, God, is this you? This is crazy. Like, leaving what we know to go to something what we don't know. How did you guys know that God was calling you to plant a church in Fargo? And how could somebody discern if God's leading them into do something like take a big step of faith like this?
Well, I'll kind of, go back to what you said. I think the two biggest things for me, and Elisabeth can add to this, but it started with this just prayer of what God had for us. We had this kind of stirring. I had this stirring of sharing Jesus with people in my hometown, just really having that heavy burden. Because when I had lived there in the past, I didn't know Jesus. So I knew what life there without him was like. And so that kind of has really challenged me and encouraged me. And so I started really praying kind of fervently about that. And we started praying together, and then we really brought the people that we trusted, that knew were following Jesus, with their whole life, and got their feedback, your guys' feedback. And I think those are the big things, and found the community that was trying to build the kingdom, finding people that were trying to kind of do the same thing we were trying to do. And so those are, prayer is huge, but also, what is your community saying to you too? So those are the two big things that kind of come to my mind when you ask that. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, we've taken a couple trips to Fargo since we've decided to do this, and just continuing to look for confirmation. And it's crazy, what I've seen in Mike is just a passion that I see that is just exponentially grown when we were in Fargo. I mean, leaving the house early to go downtown and pray for people on the street, like that, it's just easy. And that was a huge confirmation for me personally. And just driving around and seeing need and seeing lost people, or people that don't know Jesus, that we just want to share Jesus with. So
I think that's so good, because I think sometimes when we are trying to discern God's call for our life, we're sort of looking for this like sign in the sky. God, would you just spell it out in the clouds and I would follow you? But what you said is so good, both of you reiterated, is this prayer. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we sometimes forget that intentional step, that when we're unsure, James says, if anybody lacks wisdom, we should ask. And God gives it to us. And I've heard it said this way, and I know I've seen you guys, God exercise in your life, but when you're discerning a call, there's two things that you have to become in tune with. One, it's the inner conviction of what God's sort of stirring. And then there's also an outer confirmation of godly people in your life who see it, confirm it in your life. And so I've seen that, as you guys have shared with me, just your heart to plant a church in Fargo. I mean, as someone who knows you guys well, it's like, oh yeah, God's all over it. And so I think there's both that inner conviction that you have, but anybody who knows you, there's an outer confirmation that God's leading you guys in this. So I'm excited to see how God moves as you guys take this big, bold step. So share the vision for Rescue House Church? You got your swag on. I got my Rescue House Church mug here. Love the logo, by the way. It's such a great logo. But share the vision. Why Rescue House Church? What's behind the name? What are you guys believing God's going to do through this local church?
Yeah, Rescue House. It's interesting how we got the name. It was through prayer. So we kind of bring it back to that. God revealed it to us in a really cool way. But the vision of Rescue House is to create a space of hope and healing where people can find Jesus. And we just believe that there's a need for that. If there's still lost people, then there's a need for a place for people to find that in Him. And so we're excited for that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of churches in Fargo, and we're grateful for that, and we're grateful for all the believers that are in Fargo, but there are still people in Fargo that don't know Jesus, so that's why we're going there. And we picked Rescue House when you think of it as where we're going to find hope and healing, and we love the idea of a home atmosphere. When you walk in, you just feel at home, where you can let your guard down and really be healed by Jesus and feel welcome and be able to be yourself, really. You don't have to fit the mold of a church or like what you think you should be like, or you don't have to look like everyone else. You can be yourself, and Jesus loves that. So,
well, I love the name. And people asked when we planted the church in Minot, why another church? Mm-hmm. At that time, I think there was 60 some churches. But like you guys said, as long as there's people in that community that don't know Jesus, there's room for another church. And I know that's your heart is to go after the lost of Fargo, to help them discover a relationship with Jesus. Mm-hmm. And the stats show that church plants are some of the most effective tools in the kingdom of God for reaching people for the Lord. And so I'm believing with you guys that as you guys plant this church, that God's going to do some powerful work in the lives of some broken people, some people desperate for Jesus in Fargo. So I can't wait to see you guys step out. Share the timeline. Share kind of what your general plan is of how you're planting Rescue House.
So we're moving at the end of this month, and we are planning to have our first services in December. So Christmas Eve, we feel like that's just a perfect time for a new church. And so in the meantime, we're really just trying to build our team and be obedient to what God has as far as, the place, all the details, right? There's so many details at this point. And so we have a business plan that we're working, and just really trying to hone in on some things. And so, yeah.
So you're going to have your first service potentially on Christmas Eve this year. And then are you going to do like monthly services leading up to Easter? Kind of lay out that plan a little bit. I'd love to hear what the plan is. Yeah.
I think, we believe in just a strong start. And so having probably something similar to the Pursuit as far as, 3 or 4 monthly services, transitioning to weekly after that, just so that we can have the time to connect with people and build the team and, just build those relationships essentially. So that's kind of our rough plan as it goes. Definitely our plan has been kind of changed a little bit. We had this
it's fluid
plan, and then all of a sudden the world was hit with the pandemic. And so our plan has already changed. And I mean, that's why when I say this is a rough plan, I think it's really, it goes back to us in our, prayer lives, is trying to seek God and what He wants when He wants it.
Yeah.
That's a churchy answer, but it really has to be that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Were you going to say something, Elisabeth?
Yeah, I think the world is seeing right now that there's a need for something greater than ourselves. And it seems like a lot was stripped away from a lot of people. And so we're praying and hoping that out of this comes almost like an awakening, or just people searching or seeking something bigger than themselves in their jobs and money, whatever holds them back from a relationship with Jesus.
Well, I cannot wait to see how God's going to move through Rescue House Church, you guys. And I'm so proud of you. Your faith, your passion, Your willingness to risk it all for the Lord is just inspiring. And I'm so thankful for our friendship and the continued partnership that we're going to have as we support you guys, and you guys stay connected to us as well. Now, I did want to give a chance, obviously, as a local church, many of us in Minot, if you're tuning in the Minot area or Stanley, probably aren't going to get up and relocate to Fargo, although some of you might feel called to do so. How can people partner with Rescue House Church as you guys get this thing going?
Yeah, I kind of say the 3 Ps. And
Come on, the 3 Ps. Let's hear them.
I don't know. They're kind of corny, apparently, but they're really the truth. And I think the first one is prayer, having people that will really intercede for us and intercede for Rescue House, because we just believe, God has done so much here, and the faith legacy of the people here is really going to be a big momentum builder for Rescue House, because it has been for us. So prayer is one thing that we definitely need, is a lot of support in people that, God would bring people. So that's something we can even be praying about, to be on the team, to that God might be calling to take that faith step in Fargo, to just lead people to him and share their stories, and in hopes that they'll know him. And so we need people. And then the third thing is provision. I used to say pennies, but I think it's a little more professional. I heard from somebody. Provision, but its reality is there's finances, right? We have $100,000 goal to get to by our first service, so that we can provide a space, an atmosphere that we believe, will draw people that maybe have had a hard time with church in the past. Like we want it to be a place where everybody's welcome, right? So that they can find hope. And so we believe that with that budget, we can do it. So that's another thing we need. So yeah, those are the 3 Ps.
I love the 3 Ps. I know someone's been hating on them for sounding corny, but I think they're really good. Prayer, people, and provision. And, we've talked a lot about what is our relationship with the Pursuit Church and the Rescue House Church going to look like. You guys are not a campus of the Pursuit, like say our Stanley campus, but you are a church plant of the Pursuit Church. You guys are going and starting a brand new church, but we're in full support. We're backing you guys up with prayer, with people, provision, and we want to see you guys succeed in a big way, because if you guys succeed, the kingdom of God succeeds. So one thing that I wanted to share with the podcast listeners, and we haven't made this public yet, but one of the things that the Pursuit Church is going to do is we're going to give you guys up to $25,000 as a match. That you guys can use as a match for fundraising to hit that $100,000 budgetary goal. And so that's just us as a local church organization. And I would encourage people of the Pursuit Church, we talk about being radically generous. I want you to be radically generous with your prayers. I want you to be radically generous if you've been blessed financially to help them out. Of course, give to your local church, but then above and beyond, if you guys can support them, I think you're making an investment in the kingdom of God, and we're going to see God do some powerful things. So that's what we're going to do from a local church. But I'd love to hear, just for the listeners as we kind of wrap up, what can they do now to stay connected to what you guys are doing, and how can they even begin to solidify a partnership with you guys?
First and foremost, you could email hello@rescuehouse.church, and to get added to our prayer updates, we're going to be sending out probably monthly emails with updates of how we're doing. And another thing is we would love to give out some swag, some Rescue House Church swag. So we
love some swag.
Yeah. For every person who gives any amount, a one-time gift will get a mug sent to them. And anyone who sets up for recurring giving, which is something that we're really praying for, is recurring giving to help us get to the 100,000, is you can get a t-shirt, whatever size or color you'd like. We have blue and we have orange, and also a mug. So those are just some things we'd like to bless you and thank you for giving to what God is doing in Fargo.
And they can do that through your website and Facebook page?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll put that in the comments, or maybe we can put that on the screen here as you're watching. But
Yep, our website will be live on Wednesday when this is aired. And we also have a Facebook and an Instagram, Rescue House Church. So you could find us and we'll get that up so you can see that as well. So we can have more information of how you can give.
Well, I love it. And I'm believing for God to do some big things for you guys. Any final words as we wrap up the podcast today?
I think it's been an honor to serve here, and it's one of those hard leaves. But we've talked about this before. It's God's done some big things, and so we're excited to see what the Pursuit's going to be doing in the future, and we'll always be watching and maintaining our relationship, just so that we can be learning what's going on, because you guys are pioneers. You're doing some big things here, so yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to see what God's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening to the episode 8 of the Pursuit podcast. If you have any questions about the stuff we talked about, Rescue House Church, reach out. But we can't wait to come to you next week with episode 9.